Welcome to the Newswire with me, your host, Tyler Dickeroff, joined with producer Alex, as usual, sporting his Jets shirt. What's the chance they win tonight? I think Justin Fields is back.
Yeah. Man, even if he's back, I don't know, 50-50.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. If you're not sure what we're talking about, Monday Night Football. But before we get too far into that will probably come up at some point during this conversation, football, because it is fall and football season. But over the weekend, the end of last week, it was announced that President Trump, at the request of Pete Hegseth, would be sending National Guard troops to Portland. Now, some people, as they've gone off the rails and said, oh no, it's another occupation. Well, if you read in the fine print, which that tells so much, it's like, no, we're going to protect federal facilities and federal workers. Now, for some people, they can think it's another authoritarian power trip. For others that maybe are more familiar with it, have been begging for the federal National Guard to come in and protect them. Alex, I shared with you a lot of information that I see being on the regular here in the Pacific Northwest from, I would say, independent journalists that share about Portland and Seattle. As someone who used to love to go to the city of Portland when we first moved here, have not been there in years. And, you know, the last time I drove through, it looked like a war zone. As I hear from people, that's what it looks like in many places, where the downtown, which used to be so beautiful, parts of it, downtown, are boarded up. Shops have left. There is absolute, consistent, ongoing Antifa riots. That is the reality, as I know I hear from people that used to live there, that report about it and see. But let's get into it. Is this another occupation or is this a protection? What do you think?
Okay. I just spent the last 2 hours this morning. I know you're local. You've been to Portland. You're in the state. You kind of live it a lot more than me, someone who lives in Florida. I haven't been to Portland since 2007, 2008, when my buddy got married out there. We walked around at night. It was a great time. So that was 2010, 12, 14 years ago, something like that. Maybe longer. So a long time. And it was safe then. After watching a lot of content and the town hall meeting with officials, it's clear to me that and they did a polling during this town hall where they had like 10 to 12 public officials from the police department and all different departments of the city, basically, and then people calling in and polling about how safe the city is. And the number one thing was probably about 70% of the polling. And by the end of the conversation, they all agreed that the city is unsafe. And then you have the president. Now,
let me just interject. That town hall was done by a local TV station, KATV, KATV, and the mayor, who came out over the weekend blasting Trump for how dare you, this is such a perfectly safe, and right, everyone's out doing whatever. He was at the meeting, the town hall meeting, which just occurred a few days ago, less than 2 weeks ago.
A week ago.
Yeah. Okay, keep going.
Just a week ago, and the conversation starts with everyone. The first question, and I think the guy who hosted it was great. Do you guys all agree that there's progress in how the city of Portland is making in the positive direction? Everyone raises their hand except for one person, which is the police sergeant. He does not raise his hand, and they go on and continue, have a very civil conversation. But as the conversation, it's over an hour, they all go, the city is unsafe. People feel unsafe. Then they're conducting a poll throughout this thing. What's the number? Does Portland downtown feel safe? And it's like 70% basically of that polling says no. And then you get this article, just recently, that the city is suing the president for sending 200 National Guard troops. And I just try to make sense of it. It's like, clearly the city is not safe, and you're mad and literally suing the president for sending in National Guard troops into your unsafe city. Tyler, please help me understand how
We
and
had
why.
the, we were back and forth as far as what were we going to talk about this morning, and whether it was the government shutdown, the again a tragedy in Michigan over the weekend, as far as a shooting and deaths and destruction,
Tylenol.
and the Tylenol, and I said to him, it's kind of, we tossed around. I said, this is one that I can't get my arms around. I can't get my arms around because to what I shared with you, like and again, for you being all the way across the country, complete other corner, like you don't know what's going on. You don't get this. And I live in the
Yeah.
state of Washington, close to Oregon. And it's just like, what I look at is, what are the governor and mayor, Tina Kotek, and I, forgive me for not knowing the mayor's name. I think his last name is Wilson. What are they trying to accomplish by almost outwardly lying based upon the things they shared a week ago in this town hall? Like, what is their purpose? Are they riding a party line with Gavin Newsom and Bob Ferguson, the governor of Washington, and saying, man, we will do whatever we can to say you are wrong, and meanwhile the states, based upon police officials, others, different cities, not all of it, but people are continually saying it's unsafe. Like the town hall that I shared with you, one of the big factors, and this is where I saw it first, there was a gentleman, I think he's part of the Chamber of Commerce, and he said, all right, let's get to facts. And he goes on to share facts about the business environment that is Portland.
Oh, it's horrible.
And essentially he says it is the absolute worst in the entire nation as far as large metropolitan areas. And so when and they had a lady who owns a restaurant on there, they had, a few other people involved, so there was the government community, the business community, society. And the biggest thing they shared is like, you guys have taxed us to the extent we can't even get close to making a profit. And so when I look at that and I hear that, and it's like, whether you think the city's safe or not, the point in which that businesses, I think one of the ladies was a developer where it had office building, and said, we cannot lease out our facilities. People are moving outside of the greater downtown area. And so what I look at that and like, come on, whether you think it's safe or not, when it's devoid of occupants, it will become unsafe. And that's just what has happened. And that's not, to me, speculation. That's just a reality of what happens when you don't have things going on, when you no longer, like, if you were to stop mowing your grass, taking care of your house, it's all going to fall apart. It just, that's what happens. And that's what's happened in Portland. And a big part of it is because of, what's the chicken and the egg? I don't know. Is it taxes that drove businesses out? Was it the lack of actual progress because of all the taxes, which they noted during the town hall? Or is it that there's been this unfettered attack at the federal positions? All of it together, just like, man, this place is a mess. So where do you start to, put a clamp on the hemorrhage?
Well, so the developer, the woman that was the CEO of a big development company, like, just say straight up, like, the fact is, this is the worst environment to build or bring business in.
Yep.
Which I'm like,
in the country.
In the country. And then another woman who I believe was a small business owner stated 20 businesses have left the area in the last 18 months. And she goes, I can, the only reason I'm surviving is because of federal incentivization programs. That's the only reason, because no one feels safe. And I'm just like, everyone starts out the meeting going, "Oh, we're making progress," except for the one, not the sheriff, the police officer,
police commissioner.
And then you continue the conversation by basically everyone agreeing that the city is still in peril and we cannot figure out a way to, they say they lack vision. So there's no vision is one of the things that comes up in it. It's obviously clearly still very unsafe. People do not want to travel downtown. There's no businesses that want to build, or offices that are empty because they all left, or most of them left. A lot of homelessness and drug use continue to run the streets. There's a lot of what you know I'm trying to think of the right word. For progress to be made, there's so much uh outside political debate and not a lot of action taking place amongst the constituents, and high regulation, high taxes, and then when people started to come back a little bit, they raised the price of parking.
You know, once they got people in the door, then they made it harder on them. And I've seen that here in the state of Washington. You know, we've a lot of much the same what's happened in California, Portland, Washington. You know, like I think the state of Washington, I just picked up last week, their state revenues continue to drop, and they're confused, and they're like, and so the solution is let's raise taxes. And they don't understand that's going to continue to drive people out of the state. And, you know, so when I come back to the very first question, is it occupation or protection? And I will layer this in, obviously, based upon what you shared, what I have seen, the current leadership has been unable to protect citizens, federal workers, businesses, all of the like. They have been literally unable. So at what point do, you know, I look at this to say, how bad do you let it get? And that's where I look at it. My perception is it's protection of federal assets and federal employees. If it goes beyond that, you know, and when it comes back to DC, I don't think people realize, because they don't understand who is the quote unquote state, who oversees Washington, DC.
From like a protection, like policing.
Yeah, like who does like the mayor of DC, or who do those people, like, you know, Portland is in the state of Oregon. Portland ultimately has to answer to the state of Oregon. Who does Washington, DC answer to?
I guess because Washington, D.C. is the capital in its own jurisdiction, it's federal.
Yeah, it's the Senate.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't realize is, you know, going back to what happened in DC, and everyone wanted to come against Trump. How dare you? It's like, well, technically, it's the federal government's job to, you know, if it's the, you know,
capital
state of Oregon to step in and protect Portland. They're not. So ultimately, the federal government is stepping in to protect federal assets that are there, going back to DC. And it's just, here's the again, is it protection or occupation, and I'll let you answer that. It's like, if you don't change something, what's ever going to change?
So that's the other thing you sent to me was a citizen I don't know if a citizen journalist or she is a professional journalist that I watched. She did a mini documentary 8-minute video about the ICE facility in
Katie
Portland.
Davenport is her name.
Katie Davenport.
Yes, independent journalist, citizen journalist. Yes,
and
used to be with one of the large affiliate stations in the Portland, Seattle area. I'm not. Yeah.
And so, and again, I'm not in that region, so I don't know a lot. So I started watching the content, and there have been ICE rate, and you have this ICE facility. So people that, you know, you can look it up online, but you have this ICE facility. And when they go through these wide shots, you see these like brand new, like modern condos and skyscrapers in the background. And then you have, since June of this year, every single day up until now, continuing now, there have been protesters at this ICE facility. And when you see the shots of the video of the facility, the whole area is just covered in profanity and graffiti and garbage. And I'm thinking, if I just bought or renting a brand new modern condo across the street, I go, I'd be out of there as fast as I possibly could. And these federal workers, the people working at this ICE facility, it's just nonstop. They said every single day, these paid, you know, protesters, some days violent, some days nonviolent, but just totally taking over that area and relentlessly berating, you know, physically, mentally, these officers. every day. I'm like, I just don't know why and how this continues, and no one in the city or state goes, "Hey, maybe we got an issue here." 4 months of nonstop political protests, some violent, some not. These guys maybe need help. Maybe we send people in. Let's clean this up. If I was living in that area,
well, here's what's hard for me. Again, living here, watching this, for years up and down, whether it's through COVID, the George Floyd, the BLM, and a lot of the cities in the area dealt with that, right? And then come out of it, we're years past it. Here's what kills me is obviously I would contend, I don't know, but I would contend Portland and Seattle, I lump the two of them together. They're pretty close. They're politically very similar, ideologically very similar. What I don't understand is it, to me, is probably some of the worst in regards to Antifa protests, destruction of personal and public property, federal property. What I don't understand is why the representatives and the senators from each of these states and regions continually deny making people aware of what's going on.
It's unbelievable.
Like that I don't understand is like, I look at in the state of Washington, I look at my senators and my representatives, and I understand why they don't. Because they are aligned. They've been long-term representatives, long-term, Congress members. And it's almost, if they were to acknowledge there's a problem, they would say, I'm the problem. And they're not going to do that. And that's why, even here in the state of Washington, there was a district judge that was appointed. Yeah. And happened to be a Republican, has a good career. And the senator from Washington said, essentially, over my dead body will he ever represent the state, simply because he does not politically align with me. And I learned this just recently. I didn't know this. Senators from a home state have the ability within this Senate confirmation to issue what's called a blue slip. A blue slip either confirms or denies a judge getting a seat. And she said, I will use that blue slip so he doesn't get a seat. And you're like, well, why? Because politically he doesn't align with me. And those were her words. And it's just like, man, like,
and that's the one of the things that the not patrolman, police officer that was there. He's not the sheriff. Well, I can't remember exactly the title. He said we have to stop the finger pointing and the you did this, he did this, it's this person's fault. And he's just like, we have to stop with that and own up to and be accountable and vulnerable and just say, I think, honestly, Tyler, the best thing the Democratic leadership can do in the cities and what they did not show in that town hall at first and even at the end, it was just like, yeah, it is horrible here. Yeah, we're going to figure it out. But no accountability, no vulnerability of like, yeah, it's not great here, but we're going to like it's just,
well, and here's what I see and here's what I understand. The reason why there's no accountability, and these are two regions, and you go to California is maybe a little bit less predominant, but you go to the state of Washington, Oregon specifically, and they are a very high percentage Democrat. It's the way it is, and the way that political leaders, and we've seen this around the country, instead of being accountable to what they do and don't do, they turn everyone, I am the answer against the big, bad, ugly problem. Well, what's the big, bad, ugly problem? Republicans. Well, why? Exactly. They're the big, bad, ugly problem. And, you use all the terms that we hear every day. I'm not going to proliferate it because maybe I'll get censored on YouTube. That's a whole different subject. But it's the reality that it's like, instead of turning the enemy against the other political party, say, hey, we need to change these things. And that means if you're not getting it, voters, vote differently. Well, as the big ugly problem is like, well, you either with me or you're not. And if you want a position, you got to be with me. And so that's where we've seen, I think, in so many places, this political stronghold where, if you go back to drain the swamp, what did drain the swamp means? It means that instead of playing to the political regime, you actually say, no, we need to be accountable. And, where states like, I would say, Oregon and Washington, much California, have not had that accountability at all because voters keep blindly voting in their party as opposed to you. I mean, you lived in California and, the
Yeah.
reports coming out of California, like 20 years ago, 22 years ago, Gavin Newsom promised that they would end homelessness in 10 years. 12 years later, and the tune of I forget where this is, but there's a state or a region, they've spent $765 million and homelessness has quadrupled.
And
And it's just where's the accountability? And living in a community that has dealt with it, one of the frustrations is we have here in Spokane, we have two major organizations that help with rehabilitation, drug rehabilitation, personal rehabilitation and housing and all those things. Two different organizations. One of them is faith-based. So they are not allowed to get any funding outside of personal gifts. No federal, no state funding because they have a faith basis. Now, whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent, I would guess if you did a survey of the community based upon the response, they would probably get the nod as far as being the most effective. And then you have another group who has a faith named to them, has a religious denomination named to them, but zero affiliation with that organization, and they have zero accountability as far as a faith, whatever, and they get tons of funding, and they have I can't even tell you how much they've grown. And there was a recent town hall in Spokane, and they brought in I think the mayor from Boise. And, I had some friends that shared it, and she shared them you guys have a beautiful city, but you are on the verge of absolute chaos because you're absolutely ruining the city with your policy of how you're handling homelessness. And it just, as I'm sharing that and reminding, I was in Boise earlier in the summer. We went for a Post Malone concert, walked all across the city, did all the things in the city. I did not see one homeless person at all. I don't know what they do, how they handle it. We walked all down through downtown, the stadiums, all around, not any, as far as camps. We were in the parks, nothing. And it's kind of whether you agree with what people do or don't, the fact that if I wanted to take my kids to a park, and there are parks in the city I live in, I know this has been the case in Portland, where people are scared to take their kids to the park because of one, either finding drug residue, fentanyl, whatever, in the park, finding drug use, finding people there, or being so concerned about needles because of people prior drug use, that there are many parks in these municipalities in the Pacific Northwest that have absolutely, should be condemned because of how unsafe they are. And yet there's no accountability.
There's no accountability, and you continuously see it with leadership from the Democratic Party, specifically from that region, Oregon, Washington, California. I don't know why. I have a sense of why, because they just want to.
What's your sense why?
Well, what I was going to originally say is I lived in California. I started a family there. We moved out of Los Angeles because of the riots and the lawlessness. Witnessed it firsthand. And, as a new father, I just kind of had a sense of we need to get the hell out of here. And then you had the fires happen and the debacle that was with Gavin Newsom. And you have seen an exodus, maybe, I don't know if it's slow or fast, of California, especially Los Angeles. People leaving parties. People just can't take it anymore. It's very expensive. And either going totally outside of the state like we did. And we did it for multiple reasons, not like political reasons, but for multiple reasons. And it's incredible to me how the the leadership in these states knowing, and this is the heart, knowing that their cities are a mess and that the public does not feel safe in them, continue to point the finger at the big bad wolf, like you say, which is the Republican Party, instead of looking inwardly, because they, I just, and what I guess is that there's so much money tied up within that party and being thrown in their direction from, start conspiracy theory
Yeah.
number one, by, X billionaire or this group or that group, that they can't stop because there's just too much money in it. And they like the chaos and this opposition. And that's how they'll continue to feed that dragon, if you will, until.
Well, it comes back to when your main, I would say, benefactor of a lot of your fundraising are organizations that are due to solve the problem. They don't, and let's, altruistically, yes, they're there to solve the problem. But it comes down to is, if we solve the problem, we no longer have an organization.
Funding.
And that's a whether you want to call it, that's not fair. But it's a reality. And we've seen that where organizations perpetuate the problem, because if we were to solve the problem, then we'd no longer have a reason to exist. And it comes back to the vision. It's like, what do we want to accomplish afterwards? So, I think it's going to be interesting. I think when the National Guard ends up showing up in Portland, they're going to start to recognize, ooh, this is a bigger problem. I just wonder, we're coming into the election season, roughly a month away from some of the major elections. In New York City, which is just getting more interesting. You have some other, elections around the country. I think it's going to be interesting where voters start to position to say, which side do they want to go with? And here's, the point that's, I think, so interesting is we're getting more and more to the point where it's the people that are somewhere in the middle, not the protesting left or the protesting right. It's everyone else in the middle. It's like, what's going to motivate those individuals to vote from a decision of, hey, we want actual change, rather than being told, oh, this is going to change? Because again, what I'm getting at is there are states that have done very well as far as economic difference. You look at cost of living differences, you look at homelessness differences. There are states that have done very well. I mean, you look at the state of Mississippi. State of Mississippi over the last 10 years has become one of the best education states in the country.
Wow.
And they were notoriously one of the worst. Why? Because they got aggressive. They made it a meritocracy. They said, we have to change this for our society. So you either get with it or get gone. And, that accountability can be hard for people. And I think that's where we go back to the accountability, but that's what it takes.
And like New York City, you're seeing, and that's something I'm very familiar with. That's where I was born. My parents were born there. They grew up there. And just seeing the ups and downs of that city where, it's my mom still commutes into the city every day, 5 days a week. And for the first time since, I would say, over the last 4 or 5 years, since post-COVID, it's like this period has been, she doesn't feel as safe. Even when I go out there, there's just not as many people out, walking around at night, going to restaurants, place. It's changed. And a lot of it has to do, again, with public safety. When people feel safe at night, especially because they want to go out and enjoy themselves, it just, from that,
it makes a massive difference.
Massive difference, because that's like a foundational element. Hey, guys, you want to go out to the city tonight?
Well, I mean, you look at the business impact, you look at the event impact, you look at all the other, it costs money to either deal with crime and or fix the crime, as opposed to, oh, we have people coming here and spending money and we're developing revenue. That's a double whammy. So, again, coming back to it, this idea of occupation or protection, based upon my perspective, I see it as more protection. And this is one of the things. The only people scared of cops, now granted, I get it. Some cops are bad. I'm not going to say they aren't. But I've learned this is the only people scared of cops are people that are doing things they shouldn't be doing. Now, you can take it for what it is. It's not all right. I get it. But it's like, if you're not doing something bad, then really you got nothing to see here.
I know.
Now,
I mean,
that's maybe a little bit too, utopic, but I think that's probably more true than not true. My take.
I just feel, I mean, you go into these places. I think the National Guard thing, the fact that they're suing them is where I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Well, what I would love for the attorney is to find that town hall meeting. It's like, oh, you're suing us, but yet just a few days ago, you agreed in this forum, public forum, you acknowledge that it's not safe. Okay. Wow.
Makes zero sense.
So anyways, I do want to say one last thing. I've thought about if I was living in San Francisco or if I was living in New Jersey, I'd probably wear this outfit. And who do you think I would be for Halloween?
Antifa.
Robert Saleh. I'm wearing my Robert Saleh. I mean, the black. Come on.
Yeah,
if it just said Niners or Jets right here.
That's actually a great costume for you. You have a very Robert Saleh.
It would be, but again, living where I live, no one knows. So
yeah, you got to be a football fan. That's a good Halloween outfit. I like that. Coach Saleh.
My Browns lost. There's no Brown sweatshirt today. Maybe you'll get to wear more Jets gear the rest of the week. I see the preemptiveness. Way to have spirit. The Dolphins. Anyways, but
the Dolphins and the Jets have a long history. I'm hoping for the best, but no.
It is a division game. Anything can happen.
We need some hope.
Anything can happen.
Give me one win. Give us one win, and I'll have a good week.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for being here today. Choose to subscribe on YouTube. Hit the bell to get notified whenever we drop new content. Monday with the Newswire. Wednesday's new podcasts. Shorts throughout the week. Till next time, choose to lead with impact.